As parents, we like to believe that we can keep our kids safe just by locking a door and keeping the big bad world outside. But how do we keep them safe from the predators lurking inside of their electronic devices? Kacie Renee Woody was born on the 17th of October 1989 in Little Rock, Arkansas, to Rick and Christy Woody. She had two brothers by the names of Austin and Tim. She was a well-mannered girl, very friendly, caring, who enjoyed singing and dancing and playing her saxophone. Unfortunately, when Kacie was just 7 years old, disaster hit her family. They were all in the car and they were driving to Tim's baseball game when they came across a load of horses that had escaped a nearby field. While trying to swerve and avoid these horses, unfortunately one of them collided with the car on the passenger side. It smashed the windscreen, and unfortunately Kacie's mum passed away. Everyone else managed to survive the crash and got away with just some superficial injuries. But of course this would have had a massive impact on everybody. Kacie developed a huge fear of horses, and she also started writing poetry, and a lot of poetry for her mum. But time does pass, and as they say, time is a great healer. So we move forward to 2002, and by this point the family were living in Holland, Arkansas, and she was living with her father Rick, her brother Tim, and Tim's friend Eric. They also had her maternal aunt living next door, and she kind of provided the motherly role. Rick worked as a police officer and did a lot of split shifts, so he was in and out of the house. He wasn't around as much as he would have liked to have been, but as we all know, you do what you can do to bring money into the family. Their home was in a heavily wooded area, and so for Kacie to be able to speak to her friends after school was actually quite expensive. All phone calls were deemed as long distance for some reason, so her dad actually let her use instant messaging on the family's PC. For those of you who are either too young to remember Yahoo Messenger or too old to have noticed it when it started, Yahoo Messenger basically works the same as text messaging on your phone, but it obviously done via the PC at the time. So they were able to talk throughout the night, sending messages back and forth constantly. After a while, Kacie decided to join some chat rooms. She actually joined Christian chat rooms as she felt that these would be safer for children. While she was in these chat rooms, she met a guy named Dave Fagan. His profile photo was of a young, athletic, good-looking guy, surfer type dude. He was from California. And apparently he loved surfing and he loved the beach. They started talking quite a lot, and they bonded very quickly. It didn't take long before Kacie felt comfortable enough with Dave to start talking about her mum and the tragic events that happened. And wouldn't you know it, miraculously, Dave told Kacie about his aunt, who had recently been in a car accident, was currently in a coma, and just happened to live in Arkansas. What a coincidence! And really sickeningly, he then used her pain as a way to bond with her further. Kacie's best friends, Sam and Jessica, also befriended him online, and they actually added him to their buddy list, which I guess would have been like a favourites list. But Sam was wary. She was the wariest out of all of them, and she even advised Kacie to not get too involved with somebody who she'd never met. And I believe at one point she even said that these could be 80-year-old men. Now, Sam at least had some inkling that there might not always be good people around. Kacie didn't listen. She continued talking to him. Now, Kacie's dad, Rick, he knew that she was talking to boys online, but he kind of just assumed that as long as he knew that she was at home, safe, and as long as she was never really alone, if she was home and he was at work, either Tim was home, Eric was home, or her aunt next door was home. So he never felt that there was a problem until it got to the summer of 2002, and Kacie came to her dad and told her that Dave had actually turned 18, and he told her that he thought Dave was too old for her to be talking to. Kacie would have been 12 at this point, so yes, talking to an 18-year-old boy, an 18-year-old talking to a 12-year-old is predatory behaviours. He told her not to speak to him anymore. He forbade her from speaking to him. She instead completely disobeyed him and actually started talking to Dave on the phone. Getting closer, talking to him pretty much every day. And this carried on for quite a while. In the autumn of 2002, she was having a sleepover. Jessica was sleeping over at hers. And she was on the phone to Dave. And the two girls heard like noises in her house. To the point where they like barricaded themselves inside the bedroom, pushed a dresser up against the door because they were so worried. It sounded like there was somebody else in the house. And so, because she was still on the phone, she said to Dave that, like, it sounds like someone's in the house. And he said to her, don't worry, there's nobody there. And as he said this, the noises in the house stopped. Now, if that's not a coincidence, I don't know what is. But yeah, so the noises stopped and the girls calmed down. Now, over the time that they were talking, Sam actually got a little bit more suspicious. She started to question Dave's age. She didn't think he was just 18 years old. He would use outdated slang like groovy and far out. Like, this is 70s slang, so this is, you know, like this is not how an 18-year-old speaks. And she did actually like talk to Kacie about it, but Kacie had put it down to the fact that he lived in California. And she was just kind of like, maybe people in Arkansas and California just speak differently to each other. She was finding reasons. She was finding the reasons to believe him. She wanted to believe him. While she was still talking to Dave, though, she did actually start talking to another kid. He was a 14-year-old. He was into football and wrestling. Had the picture on his profile was him in his football uniform. His name was Scott, and he lived in Georgia. And the two of them started to connect. They got closer, and they actually decided to become boyfriend and girlfriend. And when she told Dave, there was no anger or resentment or anything like that. He just asked if they could continue talking because, like, she was a great relief for him, and because things with his aunt were getting worse. So it was like he kind of blackmailed her to keep talking to him because, like, he needed his friend he needed that shoulder to cry on. So she continued talking to him. She didn't feel like there was anything wrong with it. And then we come to December, and at the beginning of December, Kacie was at school, and she just opened her locker. And Sam came up behind her and noticed that there was a photograph of a guy inside her locker. So Sam had commented that, like, oh, he's hot. And it was like, where did the photo come from? And so Kacie just turned around. She was like, oh, Scott sent it to me. And Sam instantly got angry. Like, you gave him your address. You're an idiot. You shouldn't be giving people online your address. And Kacie just kind of shrugged it off. Like, oh, it's harmless. It's harmless. It's just Scott. So without telling Kacie what she was doing, Sam actually told a teacher. So Kacie was brought into the school counsellor, and she gave her the full conversation that all the kids get about how to be safe on the internet. Don't give out your address. Don't use your full name. And she was also told never to meet a friend from online without a parent or an adult present. And she seemed fine, and she went home. So we now come to the evening of December 3rd, and Kacie was actually alone, and she was very rarely alone. Her brother Tim was doing research in the library. Eric was at his electrician course. Her dad Rick was working, and her aunt was actually at her daughter's basketball game. I say this was very, very rare that Kacie was ever completely alone. She was messaging with Scott via the computer, and she was actually talking to Dave on the phone. And Dave told her that his aunt was actually getting worse, and that he was on his way to Arkansas to, like, be by her side as she passed. At 9:41 p.m, Scott actually noticed that Kacie's messaging just stopped. Now this sounds like quite a smart kid, because he kept messaging her I'm assuming because the computer used to ping. Like, I know you can turn it off now, but it always used to ping when there was a message. And he kept messaging her in the hope that the ping would alert her family that she was missing. He then also contacted Sam and Jessica in the hopes that they might have heard from her. The girls both tried messaging her, and again, there was no reply. So Eric returned home around 10:15 from his electrician course, but he kind of assumed that she'd gone to bed. It's gone 10 o'clock. He just assumed she'd gone to bed, or that she was out with family or friends or something. He kind of wasn't overly concerned. But when Tim came home, and this was around 11:40, he noticed that she wasn't in bed. First thing he did was he notified his dad. His dad's obviously in the police force, so he raced home in his squad car. And as soon as he got home, he noticed that there were signs of disturbance in the house. So he found her reading glasses that she usually would use for the computer. They were on his recliner, and one of the lenses was missing. And he also noticed that their pet dog was limping. I think it was a Yorkshire Terrier, and it was limping. And then beside that, the computer was still on, and the chat window between her and Scott was still open. Rick then called Sam and Jessica, see if they'd heard from her. Obviously they hadn't, they'd been trying to contact her. And then Tim actually messaged Scott. The window's still open, and he can see that they were talking, so he messaged Scott, and this is how they found out that she had been on the phone with Dave before everything had gone quiet. So initially the police considered the possibility that she had run away from home. But Rick denied this instantly. He was like, she was happy at home, she was practicing the saxophone, she wouldn't leave without telling him. They then noticed that all of her shoes and her coats were still at the house. And if she was going to run away in Arkansas in December, she would have taken a coat with her, because we're talking at like temperatures of like 30 degrees Fahrenheit, which I looked up because I'm English and I don't do Fahrenheit, and that's -1 Celsius. That is cold. It is freezing. She would have taken a coat. She would have taken a jumper. She would have taken layers. And she would have had shoes on. Of course she would have had shoes on. So this led the police to believe that maybe she had actually been abducted. This then led to a very quick and very large investigation into what happened. The police seized the family computer, and they spoke to her friends at the school, who were then able to tell them about her conversations with Scott and with Dave. The police also found notes in Kacie's bin, like crumpled up bits of paper with both of the guys' names written on them. So the police were able to track Scott using his IP address. So they traced his PC back to Alpharetta in Georgia. When they arrived at the address, his mother answered. She'd never heard of Kacie. She didn't know he had a girlfriend, but he was a 14-year-old child, just as he had said. So he was able to be cleared of suspicion. He was not anything to do with it. What they learned from Kacie's friends was that Dave had said he was from California and that he was visiting Arkansas. So they used that information to start a search in the local area to see if they could find anything that would connect somebody to California. And at Conway Motel 6, they actually discovered a Buick Regal with a Californian license plate. They took that license plate number, ran it through the system. They actually discovered it belonged to a man called David Fuller, who had booked in on December the 2nd. Apparently, he had got angry at the staff for not being able to connect the internet to his room. So the detectives obviously checked the room, and they found a pack suitcase, a laptop, some camouflage clothing for some reason, and rubber gloves. But they also noticed that the bed hadn't been slept in. So the next thing they checked was the Conway rent-a-car. And apparently he had been there and had acted really weirdly while filling out paperwork. He'd stepped out twice to smoke while filling out paperwork, which kind of gives off really dodgy vibes, because that's somebody who's really nervous. So the detective subpoenaed his paperwork, and they were actually able to see that his phone number matched the phone number that Kacie was using to phone Dave Fagan. They also found out that he'd rented a Dodge Caravan minivan and that his credit card had recently been charged by a self-storage facility in Conway. So Fuller was confirmed to be Dave Fagan and was instantly bumped up from a person of interest to a suspect in Casey's disappearance. So around 6 p.m. on December the 4th, the police arrived at the storage unit. The door was pulled down. There was no lock. When they lifted it, they discovered the minivan, and it was facing forwards with the engine running. Before they could do anything else, they heard a single gunshot come from inside. So the police ended up running for cover, shouting, obviously, like, to come out with your hands up, surrender. There was no reason. There was nothing. So they had to wait for backup to turn up. So when the SWAT team turned up, it was like 8:30 in the evening. Once the SWAT team arrived, they were able to storm the unit. They discovered Dave Fuller's body at the back of the minivan. It appeared that when the police had lifted the door, he had actually just shot himself in the head. Like a fucking coward, to be honest. He obviously couldn't face the reprimand for what he had just done. They opened up the minivan and discovered Casey's body. She was tied by her hands and her ankles to each corner of the back of the van. The back seats had been removed, and Fuller had essayed her before shooting her in the head. They also discovered a bottle of chloroform and a rag next to her, and they think that was what was used to abduct her. They couldn't confirm a time of death, but it was agreed upon that she had been dead for hours, and had probably been unconscious while the attack took place. After Fuller's death, the FBI got a warrant to search his apartment, and they actually found a framed collage of photos of Casey's friends. They found notes of Casey and her friends' names, numbers, and addresses that she wouldn't have given him. There was a poem that she had written for her mum that he had kept. And it was just all very, very creepy. They also discovered that he had attempted 3 other times to groom teenagers, 12, 13 years old. And it's just disturbing, absolutely disturbing. He'd offered a girl from Michigan a ticket to California to come and meet him, which she luckily declined. He had sent flowers to another girl in 2002, and she'd never given him her address. It's just really, really creepy and disturbing that if he'd gotten away with it this time, how many other times he would have tried it. They discovered that he had been to Arkansas twice before. One of them, I'm sure, would have been the time that the girls had heard creeping around in the house, because they think that he spied on Casey and the family, kind of learning their routines and when they would be around. The second visit, he actually he visited the storage unit. He rented a van, but nothing happened that time, and they think that maybe he'd intended to abduct her that time but hadn't been able to. And when he went home after the second visit, he actually went and he bought chloroform. He also bought duct tape, chains, zip ties, and he packed up the Buick before he was going to return. It was all premeditated. He'd obviously come down with the intention of attempting it before, but hadn't got the opportunity. And this time, unfortunately, she was alone. What I didn't mention was at the time of his death, he was 47 years old. 47-year-old man, and he killed a 13-year-old girl. After everything, Casey's family and friends started up the Kacie Woody Foundation. It's a non-profit organization, and it's designed to help teach parents and children how to be safe on the internet. This was in 2002, and the website stayed on until 2024. Kacie Woody's case was one of the first cases of a murder by an online predator. But unfortunately, the predators are still there. Breck David Lefebvre Bednar was born on the 17th of March 1999. Breck's parents, Barry Bednar and Lorraine Lefebvre, they moved to the UK about 3 years before the birth of Breck because of Barry's job. He worked as an oil trader and a shipping consultant, and so he was moved to the UK, and they moved there to start their family life. Lauren worked as a teaching assistant. So they had Breck, and he was a beautiful, happy little boy. He was very well behaved, and when he was 2, he became a proud big brother to triplets. And his mum said that he was a very helpful little boy. She'd ask him to get something for her while she was looking after the babies, and he would toddle off and get it and bring it back, and it was like he enjoyed being the big brother. He enjoyed having them to look after, and this didn't change as they grew up. He was the helpful big brother. He was the cool big brother that they looked up to, and they all wanted to be around him. Breck was a member of the Air Training Corps, and he also attended St. John's Evangelist Church with his family. He enjoyed gaming. It was a big part of who he was. And so he would game online with friends, and he eventually met an older kid called Lewis Danes through a gaming website. And they started gaming together. Lewis was a bit more in control of the gaming team. He would kind of tell people what they should be doing, where they should be going, and took charge. But this was seen as something he would do because he was an older kid and probably had been gaming longer. But they would play things like Call of Duty and Battlefield together. So lots of shooty games. And they enjoyed time. They enjoyed their time together. But after a while, Breck started to be treated differently. It was as if Lewis was treating him like the special one of the group. He would take him aside, maybe try and play different games with him, try and take him away from the group. But he would also talk to him about like the possibility of future wealth through their friendship. So Danes would tell him that he worked for the government and that he was running a computer business even though he was only 17, that he lived in New York and that he was living this amazing life and making loads of money, and that he was going to be able to pass that on to Breck because they were going to start some computer business together. Now, Breck had always wanted to be a pilot, and that was one of the reasons he got into the Air Training Corps in the first place. He had always expressed this interest that this was what he wanted to do. But after being friends with Lewis for a while, he started to change. His personality towards his parents started to change. Lewis would find little ways to make his mum seem like the bad guy. His mum said that she would like call him for dinner. And what started off as normal, like him leaving and going for dinner, eventually became Lewis asking questions like, why does your mum want you to go for dinner right now? Why is she being so controlling? And started painting her as if she was the bad guy. Like, why is she so interested in making sure that you get fed? Because she's his mum. That's what mums do. His attitude towards people started changing, and he decided that like he didn't really want to be a pilot anymore. He was more interested in this computer business that he was going to be making with Danes. It was much more a thing that he wanted to do. But Bednar's mum wasn't happy. She knew something was up. She knew. She could just tell she didn't like this kid. She didn't like it. Every time she heard his voice, it was deeper than the others. She knew he was older. And so she, at first, tried to get Breck to not game with him, and like tried to give a warning. But Breck, being a teenage boy and enjoying gaming with this guy, he didn't listen. He didn't listen. Kids don't listen when they don't wanna. If you're trying to tell them something, they don't want to hear it. Of course they don't. So he didn't, and I think it may have caused him to retract further from his mum, but she got so concerned by it that on the 17th of December in 2013, she actually tried talking to the police. She tried to file a complaint about this kid grooming her kid. She tried to warn the police that she thought her son was in danger. But what she didn't know is that the police actually closed the case the same day. And for months afterwards, Breck continued to game with Danes. On the 17th of February 2014, Breck had arranged with his dad to go and stay at a friend's house. He was supposed to be staying with his dad because his mum and dad had, by this point, had split up, and he was supposed to be spending the night at his dad's house, but he had arranged with him that he was going to go and visit a friend. He got on the train and he went to meet Lewis Danes. They played video games, they ate pizza, and then Breck messaged his dad and asked if he could stay over the night. His dad Barry didn't say no, he kind of just allowed it, and so Breck stayed the night. The next morning, however, Lewis called the police. He told the police that him and his friend had had an altercation and only one of them had come out alive.
Essex Police Emergency.
Hi there. Okay. Hello. I need police and a forensics team to my address, please.
What do you mean? What's happened?
My friend and I got into an altercation, and I'm the only one who came out alive.
Are you telling me you've killed somebody?
Yes, I am.
Right, and who am I speaking to?
My name is Lewis Danes.
Police arrived, they arrested Danes, and then they investigated the scene of the crime. They discovered duct tape in the bin in the house. They also just discovered some in the bin outside, as if he'd been trying to hide it from there. Danes wasn't covered in blood. He'd showered and gotten changed, because that's what a sane person would do after accidentally killing a friend. On the duct tape, it was later discovered that there was hairs that matched the DNA of the leg hair of Breck. They also discovered in the bathroom sink all of Danes' electronic devices and the electronic devices of Breck that he had brought with him, all submerged in water. This was to try to corrupt as much information as they possibly could. The devices were taken away, they were dried out. Luckily, there was a tablet that belonged to Bednar still inside his bag. It had obviously not been discovered by Danes, and so they were able to get information off of that, and then they got some information off of one or two of the other devices when they could. So they were able to discover that Danes had actually messaged Breck a few days previously, telling him exactly what to say to his parents so that he could be allowed to come over to Danes' house. They were also able to discover that Danes had actually been planning this for weeks. He had given Breck a new mobile phone when his devices were taken away from him by his mother, so that he could still contact him. He had given Breck instructions of how to be able to stay the night, tell your dad that you're going to go see a friend, and then later text him and ask if you can stay the night. This was all Danes' plan, and it was all in their messages. He had also, a month before the visit, started organising and purchasing things like duct tape and condoms for when Breck visited. So what they think happened was that he overpowered Breck, and that he duct taped his hands and his feet together. And because they found blood on a condom near the body, they believed that he was SA'd before Danes then slit his throat. Throughout all of it, Danes pleaded not guilty. He stuck by his story of they'd had an altercation. He said that Breck had been feeling suicidal, and that he had tried to stop him from taking his own life, and in the tussle the knife had accidentally cut him in the neck. However, when it went to trial, he shocked everybody by pleading guilty. Upon pleading guilty, he was given a life sentence with a minimum term of 25 years. After everything, Breck's family started the Breck Foundation. This is to raise awareness for online usage and to help promote safety. The website is still live, and his mum still goes around schools and still talks to parents and children about Breck's story and about the dangers lurking on the internet. I can't help but feel that the people that need to hear are not listening. Like, the people at the top, the people who are in charge, there must be something that can be done to make things safer. And I know nowadays, like, more and more websites are starting to use actual age verification, and I think that's fantastic. However, people can get around it. There were talks of people using like Skyrim characters as photo ID to gain access to things. There are always going to be ways around it. And that terrifies me because this is still happening. This is still happening. It's 2026 and we are still, 24 years after Kacie, still there are predators out there who are catfishing our children. Breck Bednar was 14 years old when he passed away, and Lewis Dames was 19. 19. Reportedly, when they looked through his belongings, he was definitely a paedophile. He was into young boys. He had been suspected of assaulting another child a couple of years previously, but this had never been looked into. And this was actually looked further into after Breck's case, because it turns out he was capable of this kind of thing. I know it's difficult for the police to judge children. You kind of want to just be like, oh, they're not capable of that. But they are. They really are. And it's a shame that it took until he was an adult and it took until he killed somebody for them to realise of what he was capable of. This is the case of Hailey Buzbee, and this case happened this year. We don't have a lot of information about Hailey or about the perpetrator, because this is an ongoing case. But Hailey was 17 years old, and she loved playing online video games. She joined a Discord group for online gamers, and Discord can be fantastic. It's a great way of meeting new people, people who are into the same kind of things. If you're looking for people to game with, it's great because obviously if you don't know people that play the same games as you, meeting people who will game with you is a big thing. There's a lot of games you can't play nowadays without having other people to play with you, and she wanted to play things like League of Legends and stuff like that, and those are usually like 2, 3 or 4 people in a team. So she joined this Discord group and she started gaming with new people. She started gaming with a guy who he was just really nice to her. He laughed along with her. He told her that she was really good at gaming, and they just kind of were on the same vibe and just kind of clicked. And they actually talked to each other online for about a year, gaming, exchanging photos, chatting all of the time, and it can become very easy to trust somebody when you've spoken to them every day for a year and they've always been there for you. You believe who they say they are. There's no reason that you shouldn't. You've seen photos, you know that they're not some pervy old man in a basement. They seem like normal people. They used an app called Sessions, which I had never heard of, but apparently Sessions is a little bit like Snapchat, in the sense that you can have conversations and then these conversations disappear. They cannot be traced. So we don't know the full extent of the conversations that he had with Hailey, but But we can assume that they were controlling and yet somehow made her feel like the centre of his world, because he seems like he was really, really good at doing that. So on the 5th of January this year, Hailey was in her room. Her parents thought she was safe and in bed, and she snuck out without them knowing that she was gone. And it wasn't until the next morning that they discovered that she was missing. The police initially assumed that Hailey was a runaway, but using like local surveillance cameras, so like people's Ring cameras, they were able to recognise that there was an unfamiliar vehicle in the area around 10 p.m-ish. Luckily, they were able to get the registration details from the footage as well, so they were able to track the car back to Tyler. Now, Hailey lived in Fishers, Indiana, and Thomas actually lived in Columbus, Ohio. According to the charging documents, Thomas drove overnight from the 5th to the 6th of January to pick Buzbee up from Indiana and to take her back to his place in Ohio. It's believed he did this with the intention of engaging in illicit sexual activity, including the production of child pornography. Cell phone analysis actually shows that after going back to his place, he then travelled to an Airbnb that he had booked in Logan, Ohio, and they arrived there on the 6th of January. And then at approximately 9:25 a.m. on the 7th of January, they travelled near the North County Trail trailhead in Wayne National Forest, and this is actually where her remains were later found. The phone stayed in that location until 2:15 p.m. before it then travelled back to Ohio. It would match up that this was about the time that he was burying her remains. And I say remains because when she was discovered, he had dismembered the body. When they tracked down Thomas, he admitted that he had picked Hailey up, and he was able to show them where she was buried. But currently, he is pleading not guilty to her murder. We will have to wait and see how that part of this pans out. The FBI are currently putting together their case. He has yet to be charged with her murder. They have searched the Airbnb where they stayed, and there are traces of blood that are currently being analysed. And they also searched his residence, and they found images of child pornography. They found conversations between him and a 10-year-old girl. Tyler Thomas is 39 years old. 39 years old, and is using the internet to prey on these young, impressionable girls. Allegedly. Let's say this case is ongoing, and when more information becomes available, I will pass it on to you guys. But currently, Ohio lawmakers are trying to put forward a new law called Hailey's Law. And this will actually be that when you register for an online platform, you will have to register your age, and this will put you into either minor or adult category. And if you are a minor, your account must be paired with an adult's account that has already been verified. I think this is a fantastic idea. I think this is very much needed worldwide. This feels like a step in the right direction as far as I'm concerned. We do just end up trusting people because we've seen a face. But if you look at the face of Lewis Danes, he didn't look like he was 19. He looks like he's a baby. And so you just believe that people are who they say they are. People use photographs of when they were 12, even though they're 50. There's nothing that's going to stop you from doing that. I just wanted to highlight these cases because I want more people to be careful and to understand what is out there. the dangers that are out there are terrifying, absolutely terrifying. So please, if you have children, make sure they understand. Make sure that they tell you what they're doing. Make sure you understand what they're up to, what they're doing, who they're talking to. If you've made it all the way through this video, thank you for being here. This is a horrible topic to have to talk about. And I appreciate you all for sticking around. If you have any comments, please continue the conversation in the comment section below. Until next time, guys, remember to look after yourselves, and I'll see you in the next video.